That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Trade Talk. This week we're discussing Neil Gaiman's Teknophage, Volume 1. Funny story about how I found this. Never even heard of this before. But I was just at a local antique auction store and they got, a bunch of crap that's not antique by any definition. And I just see the word Neil Gaiman and it's a comic and I'm like, yeah, fuck it, I'll buy that. And it was like $5 for a really thick-ass book. So, never heard of this. And there's a reason for that. I got really excited when I saw Neil Gaiman, Teknophage comic book. I'm like, yeah, why the fuck didn't I know about this? And that's because it's not written by Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman's all over the place with this, just every time this shit happens. Where he has a really good idea for a series or an issue or something, or a script, something like that. And then it just can't come together because of internal company stuff or forces out of his control. So he doesn't ever end up writing it, or it doesn't ever end up getting published at the time it was meant to come out. And so it loses something. That happened with Superman, Green Lantern, the Green Flame, I think that was called. That was like a weird continuity thing is the reason they didn't want to publish that. And I think DC's crazy for having a Neil Gaiman script and not publishing it. But it took them 10 years, but they did it. Teknophage, not exact same circumstances, but similar in that the company that was getting together a bunch of writers and licenses was trying to produce just some kind of like, third-party stuff. It was the 90s. Comics were a bit of a boom. And the parent company of the Sci-Fi Channel wanted to have an offshoot comic book line. And yeah, they contacted a bunch of writers who were kind of up and coming in the industry and had a lot of buzz around their names and asked for ideas and stuff. And like, oh, develop some ideas for us and we'll give you a comic series and pay you really well and all that stuff. And so Neil Gaiman developed the idea for Teknophage, as well as a couple others, Lady Justice, Mr. Hero, stuff like that. And then the company folded and the series never even got started. There was never even a full script produced for more than a couple pages of stuff. There was just Gaiman's outline of what the series would be and how it would go. And then a couple years later, the company that folded got bought up, or the rights and stuff, legal mumbo-jumbo, got traded over, and a new company, or a new subsidiary called Super Genius, bought up the rights to do Teknophage, and they got Neil Gaiman's blessing and got him to hand over his outline and give a little bit of insight and even write a couple of the first issue, I believe. It's either the first issue or at least the first couple pages of the first issue. Yeah. Wheel of Worlds #0. Neil Gaiman and John A. Rieber. Plot. Lady Justice, pages 4. Yeah, so. Pages 5 to 6, 36 to 45. Yeah. So he just writes a couple pages himself, and the rest is just Neil Gaiman's concept done by someone else. That being said, this is really fucking good. I so enjoyed this in ways I did not even expect to. Like, I expected to enjoy it because it's Neil Gaiman. Then I found out Neil Gaiman is tangentially involved. All he did was really pitch the idea and write an outline. That must have been one detailed fucking outline. Either that or the writers that took it over. I know Paul Jenkins is on this. Let's see here. Based on concept created by Neil Gaiman, Rick Veitch, Paul Jenkins, Neil Gaiman, C.J. Henderson, John A. Rieber, and James Vance are the writers on this series. And this is 10 issues of comic, basically, but like 10 long issues. So yeah, this is actually really good, and if I did not read all that preamble stuff that established this isn't written by Neil Gaiman, I might have actually believed this was like early 90s Neil Gaiman, because it is really, really interesting. So what is the Teknophage about? Well, the best way I could think to describe it is to describe it for nerds. So this is an interesting series in that the Teknophage is the lizard that you see on the cover. If you notice, he's wearing a suit, so he's a very fancy lizard. And he is called the Teknophage. That is his wider identity. It's technically the name of his species, but he's the only one. The wonderful thing about Teknophages is Teknophages are wonderful things. So he's the only one of his species left. And the best way I could describe the Teknophage is, imagine if Darth Sidious was completely successful. And I don't just mean in like ruling the galaxy, I mean in commanding the Force, extending his life, and dominating his will upon the galaxy for eternity. And was also a dinosaur. That is like the best description I can give you. It's really, really weird to think of it that way, but that is the Teknophage. The Teknophage is a creature born 65 million years ago on a planet much like Earth from another dimension, and its species were super predators that just destroyed everything and nearly hunted themselves to extinction. And they eat anything they could get. It's nuts. So they'd eat anything they could get, and unfortunately, the Teknophage was born with 2 siblings, and he was barely able to survive. He and his siblings were barely able to survive their father eating them, but they were saved by their mother, who ate their father because she wanted to eat them. So, like, he survives on the margin and goes a separate way from his siblings, but goes into hibernation at one point in the core of his planet, some such, and gains psychic powers. And so now not only is he a fierce, brutal super predator, but he's a fierce, brutal super predator with psychic abilities. And so when he eats someone, it's not just sustenance, he consumes their soul and extends his own life. And the fiercer the person he eats is, the more he extends his life. He talks about how, using his psychic abilities, he found portals and doorways to other worlds, and he hunted on those worlds, and he found a world that he was very much appreciative of. Called Albion. I discovered Albion long before I'd constructed the Wheel of Worlds. Hunting the multiverse was a haphazard affair in those days, involving crude mysticism and more than a little luck. Albion was blessed with a small population of Wangastais, carnivorous canines superbly equipped to rule the planet's food chain. Wangastais were highly intelligent, fiercely territorial, and quite ferocious. In short, they were the kind of superb predator that I would actively seek out in my younger days. Part of their appeal was the challenge and thrill of bringing one down. I especially prized their richly textured souls, each of which served to extend my own lifespan by weeks, if not months. But mostly it was their taste that had me coming back to Albion again and again. Wangastais were just damn delicious, and I savored each and every one. Long after I hunted them into extinction, I would return to Albion, hoping Wangastais had reestablished themselves. But they were gone, their empty niche filled by a quickly evolving race of apes. And then he talks about, like, how he found apes on the planet Albion who had evolved into humans. And he couldn't help but offer them technology and shiny objects. But that was before I discovered how quick they were to go for the gaudy bauble, the bright shiny object, the forbidden fruit. And it's very important. Like, you look at the imagery here, the guy picking apples, the Teknophage coming down from the tree and offering a sword. And, like, the idea of the Teknophage as the serpent, as the devil, is not subtle at all. It's meant to be there from the very beginning of the book. But he inserts himself into the development of a human species, and for entertainment alone, demolishes it, ruins and demolishes it, because he finds it fascinating. Like, I really like this page. The beauty of such a system is that soon it takes on a bizarre character all its own. The ending was messy, of course, and before you can say boo, it's ruining itself like a child's toy train set, but worth it for the bumper crop of notorious heroes that were mine for the tempting. So, like, he creates these societies of complete and wanton chaos and destruction in order, and installs himself as their god in order to farm the kind of character, the kind of soul that he likes to eat. And that's just... Now, I'm sure, will say Mr. Henry Phage, that's what he goes by, goes a little too far in the search for the perfect meal, to which I'll answer, these apes of Albion have taught an old reptile the value of patience. Who'd have thought such a scurvy race of mammals could produce such an exquisite dining experiences? With my Wheel of Worlds, I've applied the lessons learned here all across the multiverse. Caligra, Avalon, 1,000 others, soon even Earth itself shall grace my table. Hail, Albion! You were my first, and indeed, you fed me well. So he just goes from multiverse to multiverse, planet to planet, corrupting the society to the brink of chaos in order to give himself heroes for a good meal, and leaves them after in squalor. And that's chapter 1. Like, seriously, that's chapter 1 of the book. And it's not even, like, getting into the main meat. Haha, because eating people. The main meat of the story. The rest of the series shows it to you. Shows you the corruption, shows you the destruction, the wanton chaos. And it's knuckin' futs, y'all. So it began as this guy gets pulled into a dimension without realizing what he's gotten himself into. He was doing a shady real estate deal and yada yada yada. But before he knows it, he's been pulled into Caliga or something like that, which is one of the worlds that Henry Veitch, the Teknophage, is in the midst of ruining, and now he's established complete control over it all. And so, like, the first half of the book is just introducing you to this world that completely bows to every whim of the Teknophage and is completely subservient to him. Like, to the point where, where was it? It was just a couple pages earlier than this, wasn't it? To the point where, like, the Teknophage's butler wakes him up to let him know they've arrived somewhere and so on and so forth. And he's like, I'm hungry, porridge. And he's like, the guy's like, are you hungry for me? Will I get to be one with the Teknophage? Please, I cannot stand to be rejected again. And you see that he's missing an arm, which means that this guy's like a butler to the Teknophage, and he's subservient and happy to be eaten by him, but he's missing an arm now because he's tried before. And in the words of the Teknophage, you did taste like cardboard, didn't you? It's my own fault, you know. I've been running this world with an iron hand for so long that I've frightened the killer instinct out of all of you. You've had to become little, like, vapid cattle to survive your place in the food chain of Caligar. And so deny me the spicy essence of carnivorous predator that I crave and require. Fortunately, our friend Beaumont is especially good at buying himself more time. I sense great potential in this latest prospect he sent over. Like, all this stuff. So it's just, he's completely dominating this world. And by the way, the art in this book is phenomenal. I just love the images of the Teknophage. And so, he's not necessarily the main character of the first half of the series, but he's in a lot of it. It's not like anything where we're wondering what's the Teknophage like, what's going on with him. We find out everything we need to know about him as we go, but it gets deeper and deeper into him. So the first half is about this guy and girl who have been brought to the Teknophage's world and are dealing with trying to live there and exist there and just dealing with the chaos and stuff. As they try to kill him. They want to assassinate the Teknophage. And it's just about everything they need to do to try to get him in position so that they can kill him. What One thing that's really fucking creepy is you see the Teknophage feed on one of his subordinates at one point, and like the dude stays alive after he's been swallowed. And not just for a while, the dude's alive for like weeks. Which is really, really interesting and creepy. The Teknophage lives in a gigantic skyscraper that moves like a fucking tank. Like, you know that stupid movie that comes out in a couple weeks? Yeah, like that, but cool. And you see what it runs on, what it uses for fuel. A lot of the there's no real science in this series. Everything runs on alchemy. So you see the fuel for the Teknophage's vessel, and it's human bodies thrown into the vat and alchemated into fuel. Ultimately, it takes a while, but they manage to get the Teknophage cornered. There's a lot of just crazy shit that goes on to get you there. It takes a hot minute. It's a lot more than the first half, isn't it? Or I guess not. It's about the halfway point. So anyway, the Teknophage is cornered, and the people from Earth have got him dead to rights, gun pointed at him and everything. It looks like they'll finally be able to end his murderous reign. And I really like, there's like a lot of commentary on capitalism. This is a pretty big middle finger to a capitalist system, because the Teknophage runs everything like a business, and everyone's talking about all these awful things like business opportunities, and human lives are a commodity and everything. So there's like a great scene. Okay, here it is. What have they got to offer you? Warmth? Companionship? You know how far that gets you in the world of business? I have big plans for this multiverse, Nicholas. Rob. I need men like you with the gumption to help me turn an honest profit. What do you say? Are you ready for the real big time? I don't offer this kind of arrangement to anybody. Sure, I'm tough to work for. I run a tight ship, and I don't suffer fools easily. But when things go well, I share the booty, at least with my top people. Full partners. A cushy job, Rob. Carries all the perks a mover and shaker like you deserves. You get personal subliminal interjection, 3 divisions of vulgar bootmen, the right to tax and enslave local populations all across the multiverse. When you feel the need to come in and press the flesh, a nice corner suite just down the hallway from my own office. I just love that. Like, that's his bargaining chip, is like business acumen and stuff. And it almost works, but Rob pulls the trigger, and unfortunately his machine fails. As the Teknophage had planned. Teknophage knew every move Rob was going to make with this machine and planned for it to fail. And he says, yes, I knew you had it in you, Nicholas. I smelled it. For too long I've endured a diet of barking jackals when my deepest craving can only be satisfied by the taste of a true predator. And now the Zebulon's bumbling attempt to save themselves hands me a fantasy banquet on a silver platter. But an exquisite assassin with all the trimmings. Be proud, Nicholas. This one's going in my memoirs. As he just starts fucking eating the guy. And I mean, just like, look at the paneling, look at the detail and all this stuff. As the Teknophage just starts chomping down on the dude's legs. Oh god, it's so fucking brutal in like the perfect way. It's just great. And like you see, there's a situation where they almost escape. And you see Rob's legs have been completely chewed up and are now worthless. But ultimately, it looked like they were going to be saved, but then things kind of went sideways for Rob. And the Teknophage won in the end and kicks him into the vat because he failed his assassination, or he got too close to succeeding with his assassination attempt, which kind of pissed the Teknophage off. Kicks him into the vat and turns him into fuel. It's too good. Oh god, look at some of the covers too. I love the covers. Then there's the second section. I guess it's not a half. This is where the second part of the story comes up. Like, that gives you a sense of the kind of games the Teknophage plays, with, like he said earlier, stoking heroicism out of people because that tastes better to him. And so he does it again with now we do all this commentary on capitalism. Now we do the second arc deals with the commentary on capitalism's effect on religion. So like we start off this arc with a televangelist essentially that got brought over and now worships Henry Phage and all this stuff. But you got the like religious leaders that were brought from our world or from worlds over to serve under the Teknophage's world. You got shit with them as they plan to free a captured religious figure that the Teknophage has been keeping alive to try and break his soul and torment him because he thinks he'll be tasty. And that's where we get like this story where the Teknophage tries to break the man by revealing that he found a disgusting little planet called Earth millennia ago, and he didn't think anything of it. He was disappointed because he overslept and missed out on all the predators. All he found was bones and a bunch of fluffy mammals. So he missed out on the dinosaurs. But instead he finds two humans who are, or not even humans, two Neanderthals. Cro-Magnons. Yeah, I think that's the word they use. And he walks up to them and offers nothing but a shiny bauble. And the woman reaches for it to take it, thus corrupting the species from the beginning with greed. And that species is Earth. And that species is humans. So there's like religious commentary, and the Teknophage says, "How many lies have you told, old man? How does it feel to know that your religious teachings are archetypal at best, depictions of at their very worst, or deceptions at their very worst? But the truth is this: I was the serpent in the Garden of Eden, the seducer of men." So the Teknophage has been guiding man to damnation for ever since the beginning of man. Yeah, this is kind of crazy. So, like, these religious leaders break into the Teknophage's vehicle, and he's aware of their plot. He's got spies on top of his psychic powers. And he's aware of every step of their plot and lets it happen because he thinks it's going to be a better meal for him. But this time, his planning gets him in the end, and it backfires. Because as he throws soul after soul into the vats to turn into food, or to turn into fuel, finally the alchemic engines of the ship turn on him and produce something that maintains the souls and combines them into something, a force against him. And so he has created his own destruction. We our collective. We thank you for the life you have given me, us, Henry Phage. They say you could sense the fear in Henry Phage's heart. As he faced the new order, he was truly alone and afraid for the first time in his life. And as the creature made it ready to leave, it said the very worst thing the old lizard had ever heard. You are yet nothing compared to what we have become, Henry Phage. But take heart, it is not too late for you to find the true path. And the thing escapes and leaves behind a trace of itself. And ultimately there's a bunch of very Gaiman-esque waxing poetic and stuff. A lot of people saw what happened that day. All of us seem to understand that we now had a choice. Because somewhere out there, probably nearby if I'm not mistaken, is a new order of which Mr. Henry Phage himself is most deathly afraid. Here, this for you, a little piece of hope. Something we've never had before. I know there's some would say that ain't much, little piece of hope on a world such as Caligar, but it's a lot more than we ever had before. And so that's the end of Volume 1. Again, I didn't know this series existed. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, though. This is just really, really interesting, really, really cool stuff. And I just really like the character of the Teknophage as this super evil predator monster kind of thing. It's really, really fascinating. And he's just, he's deliciously evil, just like Palpatine. I love this. And it has like the same kind of downfall where he keeps creating these things that are meant to entrap his enemies, but all he does is just give his enemies the chance they need. Really, really dig it. Great stuff. Oh, okay. That'll do it for this episode of Trade Talk, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to have to see if I can find Teknophage Volume 2 now, see if I can luck into that one. But yeah, thanks very much for watching, everyone. Until next time, bye!
That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.